Hello and welcome to the first episode of Thoughtcast. I'm Narayan Lakshman, Senior Associate Editor and Opinion Editor of The Hindu. In this episode, we'll be looking at manifestos setting the agenda. At this all-important time of general elections in India, what matters more than what each of the major parties themselves are saying and promising to the people? And the way they do that, obviously, is through their manifestos. We have seen two very interesting manifestos, one each from the BJP and the Congress, seen as the primary major parties taking on each other in this election. And as one would expect, the manifestos have been rather different in terms of what they promise, but also in terms of what their vision is for free democratic India. Joining me today in this discussion are Nistula Hebbar, Senior Political Editor from Delhi, and Sandeep Phukan, who is also a political specialist from Delhi who tracks the Congress party. Nistula, of course, tracks the BJP. And they have deep and powerful insights on not only what these manifestos are saying, but the thinking that has gone on in the background in putting these manifestos together, in trying to engage with the people, in trying to mobilize votes for this 2024 Indian general election. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the conversation.
So, Nistula and Sandeep, thank you for being here. And
thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's start the discussion with the obvious question, which is what goes into the thinking behind the manifestos? How are they put together? Nistula, you want to tell us from the BJP side what insights you have?
Thanks, Narayan, for this discussion, because I feel that manifestos don't get discussed enough. We just do them on that day and that's about it. Number two, BJP has for a while now done a kind of an outsourcing job on their manifestos, which is that they have all these little vans that they set off. This they do even for the assembly elections, and they collect suggestions from the public. They collect online suggestions through the Namo app and other these things. Then there is a committee. Then there is a backroom team which sits and sifts through some of the likely stuff. This time it was done by Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. And then it is handed over to the manifesto committee headed by somebody senior like Defense Minister Mr. Rajnath Singh. Co-convener was Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. And then they all sit together and kind of decide what's to go in and what is to stay out. So that's the how of how they do it. Obviously, all of this, whatever the suggestions are, you could have all sorts of outlandish suggestions. There were things like people are asking for help, how to, kind of get married and stuff as well. But the point is that, when you have suggestions like this, it has to kind of hew to your own party ideology and all the other things that you have been talking about in the past. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been very famously kind of against what he terms as reverie or the freebie culture. So he's not there for giveaways and things like that. And yet, there is an extension of the food program. There's certain things that they have to mention. And he's also talked about, in the past, he's also spoken about how the poor in this country who are just been pulled out of from below the poverty line, which is 25 crore people under this government, they need continued support, right? So because they've entered the neo middle class, and even even one thing like a serious illness in the family could see them slide back right down because of indebtedness and everything. So then that's why you have something like the extension of healthcare, universal healthcare for senior citizens. Anybody, whatever the income category, it's for everybody that they are getting it. Then you have cooking gas pipes, cooking gas through pipelines after Ujjwala and cylinders not being available. This is a tweaking that they have done in that particular program. And of course, the Mudra loans, they've raised the ceiling. They've not done what was kind of expected, which was to increase, to make the Kisan Samman Nidhi, which is the income support scheme for farmers. They didn't make it quarterly. It's still just 3 installments in a year. So it's a balance between what you have said in the past and also pragmatism with regard to elections, what voters would like you to say. So that's the way that I see the BJP's manifesto creation.
That's really insightful, Nistula. Thank you. And Sandeep, you want to give us a mirror image of what's happening in Congress?
So I think, Narayan, the interesting part of preparing a manifesto for an opposition party is that you can promise the moon. The problem really starts when you come to government, when you come to power. Coming specifically to the Congress manifesto, this was actually a very elaborate exercise, and they have said this in the past, and even during the launch of the manifesto, that this is largely a document that is prepared from what they heard, voices of people that they gathered during the Bharat Joro Yatra, the two editions of the Bharat Joro Yatra that Rahul Gandhi led. So it's essentially, after sort of filtering out what they can and what they can't do, they have prepared the document. So, in fact, to quote Rahul Gandhi at the launch event, he said that the Congress party has only written the manifesto. It's essentially what people want from the new government, or it's essentially what they expect the government to do. And they said that, he said that once we come to power, we will implement them. Just exactly how they will implement all these promises, and there are several key promises. For example, the right to apprenticeship. That's a right. So everybody who attains a certain skill and above a certain age can demand, at least for 1 year, he or she can demand a job, an apprenticeship that will pay them about 1 lakh of rupees. Similarly, the bottom, families that are at the bottom of the income pyramid, the below poverty line families, women of those households will be given 1 lakh rupees a year again. These are very concrete promises. Then there are, Nistula just talked about the universal health care. Again, that is something that they have promised, universal health care, up to cashless treatment, up to 25 lakhs a year, free insurance. So these are promises that have financial implications. Then, as I see it, essentially there are 3 pillars that they have given. One is the economic justice. So you have all this employment, you have stipend, you have monthly assistance. So this is the economic part of it. Then the other pillar is social justice. Caste census is the foremost. The other very big promise with far-reaching consequences is that they would actually remove the ceiling of 50%. In some ways, it is already sort of not there, because the economically backward caste quota that was brought in, that actually, the Supreme Court has upheld that. So in some ways, that ceiling has been breached, but they have actually said that they will bring in a law to remove this cap of 50%, with 10% reservation meant for economically backward sections belonging to all castes. So that's an additional 10% that they have promised. So this is the part on social justice. And the third pillar is political justice, which flows, as it were, from the social justice. This is again going back to what Rahul Gandhi has been saying, that jitni abadi utni haq. So, essentially giving you a fair share in governance in proportion to a community's numbers in society or in population. So these are the 3, things that they have actually worked around with. And in terms of concrete promises, I think it's 5 Nyay, 25 guarantees. So they have given some 25 guarantees. On the other side, you have, Prime Minister Modi's guarantees. And here, of course, they have successfully played around with these guarantees in some of the previous assembly elections, like Karnataka, for example. They came up with these guarantees, 5 guarantees that clicked. In Telangana, it clicked for the party. So I think they have broad-based these 5 pillars of justice, or 5 Nyay, as they call it. This is it comes straight out of Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Joro Nyay Yatra. And then out of these 5 pillars of justice of 5 Nyay, 25 guarantees. This is how, this is the thinking, the philosophy behind the Congress manifesto. And Many of them, Narayan, mind you, are actually many of these promises are actually a departure from Congress's own past. For example, for a long time, Congress as a political party did not categorically accept the existence of caste dynamics. So to promise caste census is quite a departure. But that is something that they had decided. They held a Congress working committee meeting. There have been opposition, notably senior leader Anand Sharma wrote to Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge saying that this has not been our position. But I think overwhelming majority of the party now believes that they will go with this if they come to power. And there's nothing divisive about it. Perhaps a late realization that on this caste matrix, the party seems to have lost out completely to regional parties, many of whom are their allies right now. So that is one part, the social justice part. But the nuts and bolts of this manifesto, as it were, was prepared by a committee headed by former finance minister P. Chidambaram. He headed the committee, and it had very senior leaders like, for example, Jairam Ramesh was there, even Anand Sharma was there. So there was a committee. They held a few meetings based on the feedback that they got. Another interesting point that I would like to point out here, Narayan, is that if you recall, in the past few assembly elections, reverting back to the old pension system was a big promise of the Congress party. In this manifesto, they are silent on that. So perhaps, I don't know, what was the thinking behind it, but perhaps, some of them thought that it may not be financially possible to completely revert back to the old pension system. And that's why they are silent on it. When this was asked of Mr. When this was posed to Mr. Chidambaram at that launch function, he said that we are not silent. It is very much there on our minds. But since the government of the day has formed a committee, we are actually waiting for the committee to give its report, and then we will take a call. But it's certainly a U-turn, because in the previous assembly elections, they had categorically made the promise that if and when they come to power at the center, they will go back to the old pension system and not the new pension system.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think we've thrown up a lot there to unpack. So let me just say, obviously, manifestos reflect the thinking of the party, but they also are a reaction to what society is telling them. And both of you, I think, in different measures reflected that. So, Nistula, I think you were saying, while it was decided by committee and there's a very organized process behind putting the BJP manifesto together, they've certainly taken on board feedback that they've got.
They got some 15 lakh suggestions, is what I was
through the app and through so many other means. And also, I think it's while we have picked up the Congress and BJP manifestos for this conversation, not to forget that there are many other parties and they have so many agendas, and that raises complex questions also of how the center would work with states, with regional parties. So there's only so much we can analyze here, but within that framework, what I really wanted to put to both of you is BJP, its 10 years of rule. Many of the landmark achievements, CAA, Ram Mandir, so many things have already happened. Even in economic growth, certain things have promises have been delivered on. How does, looking back at 10 years, how does the manifesto portend policies for the future? What is it? How is it forward looking in that sense of actually being a promise? And in the case of the Congress, Sandeep, it's a little bit, in a sense, politically on the back foot after these 10 years. But the challenge for them is also exciting because they have to once again galvanize the people. Do they hearken back to the same Nehruvian or liberal progressive vision? Or do they have something in between, which is almost, between where they first stood and where the BJP stands now? So if you could reflect on the forward-looking aspect of it, Nistula, you want to take that?
So I always look at the 2014 mandate for Prime Minister Modi as one of aspirations. But even at that time, everybody knew from his work as Chief Minister of Gujarat and the power reforms and other things that he had undertaken there, that this was not a government which would be giving too many freebies or too many giveaways and those kind of things. So in that sense, there is a kind of a continuity in the manifesto. Obviously, two very big aspects of the ideology have been taken care of. Out of the three core issues of the BJP and the Sangh Parivar, two have been addressed in these 10 years. One is the abrogation of Article 370. The other was the construction of a Ram temple in Ayodhya. So those two are out of the way. So in that continuity, Prime Minister said that the third item, which was the implementation of a uniform civil code, and added to that would be this idea of one nation, one election, simultaneous polls to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies. Those would be the ideological sort of goals for Prime Minister Modi. Now, in terms of departures, I would say that the foreign policy aspect, we've always been spoken about, Vishwa Guru and India basically taking its kind of place in the, Committee of Nations and, getting a permanent seat at the Security Council. That, of course, is there. But the phrase that is being used now is not Vishwa Guru, but Vishwa Bandhu, which is very, very clearly aimed at a multilateral sort of world order that seems to be shaping up. And Prime Minister Modi wants to give this message through the manifesto about what his government's attitude would be like, why he takes the foreign policy decisions that he does take, and what is behind the thinking of the government of India when it deals with other countries. Of course, a lot has been talked about in terms of getting back people who are stuck in war zones and how they need for a stable government. The thing with the BJP and Prime Minister Modi at this point of time with this third manifesto is that it has to stand on the 10 years of governance, the record of 10 years of governance. So in terms of continuity, there is a lot. But in terms of change, there is really not so much. So when we found that there was no mention of the NRC, the National Register of Citizens, there were questions which were asked. Some refused to answer that question because probably they didn't know, but others did answer that question off record, of course. And they said that it wasn't mentioned because there is no split in the political spectrum conceptually over this. This is just an implementation issue. So it's a governance issue which will be implemented as and when. So that was the answer that was given to us at that time. So I would say that Prime Minister spoke about three kinds of infrastructure: physical, which was your roads and bridges, etc. Then you have your social infrastructure, which is all the stuff that has been done for marginalized communities, and he has drawn a contrast with the Congress on how he looks at marginalized communities or communities that need help, which is the Gyan configuration, which is Grameen or rural. You have the youth. You have the Annadata of farmers, and you have the women. And he's talked about extension of increase in terms of scholarships, all those things which are made available to marginalized citizens. Not too much mention of minorities either in this manifesto. And the final infrastructure that he talks about is the digital infrastructure. So what he is saying is that I have given you 10 years of governance. This is the way I mean to go on, and it will be definitely predicated on what has gone on in the past. So there is a kind of a continuity that is more obvious in this manifesto than any radical change of posture. I don't think that for somebody who goes to polls for the third term, it's actually even possible to have a radical departure in the manifesto. But the philosophy of this government is very much evident in it.
Great. Thank you. Sandeep, you want to add your side of this?
Yeah. So, as I said, in terms of departure, I've already told you that the big departure that I see is, the Congress's emphasis on social justice. That's something that actually the party had lost out in the late 80s and early 90s to regional parties. Quite clearly, the Congress has not been in power, barring a few exceptions. They've more or less, they've not been out of power for over 30 years in Uttar Pradesh. Barring that small interlude of some 18 months in Madhya Pradesh of the Kamal Nath government, they've been out of power again now for over 15 years.
22.
In fact, 20 years, more than 20 years now. Again, more than 15 years in Chhattisgarh, they, of course, successfully had 5 years of Bhupesh Bagel's government. So essentially, in the Hindi heartland, they will have to build a constituency that moves beyond their traditional, constituency of poor and then the Dalits and Muslims, minorities. So, they will have to move beyond that. And they are clearly building a constituency by emphasizing on social justice. As I see it, Narayan, this is also a counter to essentially the Hindutva umbrella, because one huge success of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the BJP since 2014 is that practically every caste interest groups have come in under the umbrella of Hindutva. Now, what the Congress is trying to do is that they are trying to tell these groups that ask for yourself, what have you got in these 10 years? What is your share in governance? What is your share in development? You keep hearing Rahul Gandhi in rally after rally, he keeps saying that there are 90 secretaries to the government of India and only 3 are from the OBC, the other backward classes. So by emphasizing that, I think there is also an attempt, of course, we've asked this question that is this your counter to Hindutva and this single identity or single umbrella of Hindutva under which BJP wants to fit in all castes and all groups, to which, of course, I remember this was a question that I asked to Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge, and he said that no, that is not our intention. Our intention is to genuinely, offer a fair share in governance to all these groups that have been left out from the process of development. So this is what he had said before the Karnataka elections last year. But I think I would say that there is also an element of politics here. So these two things are a clear departure from the past. Then, of course, there is some bit of balancing act. Since you asked me about, are they returning back to Nehruvian socialism? Not quite. But they've also moved away from the consensus that was among political parties on liberalization. Don't forget that not too long ago, just 10 years ago, the repeated claim of the Congress party is that we were the ones who liberalized. 1991 was this was our offering to the country. Manmohan Singh, the combination of P.V. Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh, we opened up the economy. Liberalization, globalization are terms that you hear today. It's because of us. That's what the Congress had said at that point of time. But there is no consensus right now. If you hear of late, Rahul Gandhi has been actually saying that we will do a caste survey and we will redistribute wealth. So, that's almost like going back to Nehruvian socialism. But he stopped short of it by saying that, look, we are not against large industries, but our focus will be on medium, small scale, micro enterprises, the MSME sector, because that is the sector, that is the segment that creates jobs. Our primary focus would be to create jobs. And they keep saying this. The Congress has been saying that India is going through unprecedented levels of unemployment. This is a big failure of the Modi government. And that is why we need to address that. And how do we address that? By actually focusing on smaller industries, labor-intensive industries, and that's where the jobs are going to come from. But I think since 2013, or maybe the process had started around 2012, policy paralysis is a word that got stuck to the Manmohan Singh government. And it almost seemed as if Congress was anti-industry. It was against Indiaing. I think that is something that they have sought to correct, which is why there are sections in the manifesto that clearly says what they will do to ease business and make it easier for big businesses in terms of access to capital, in terms of building better infrastructure, And also, there's very interesting, there's a segment called Defending the Constitution. And that section actually talks about, reversing a lot of these laws, that makes the central agencies very powerful. Yeah. So, Enforcement Directorate, CBI and all that. So they are saying that actually even these agencies are a hindrance to economic growth, because there is a segment, there is one sentence that says, we will give you freedom from fear. So, that's an interesting formulation. And the fear comes from the unabashed use of these agencies against all sections of society, but mostly against opposition parties. That's what the Congress manifesto says. And that's why they will restructure these laws as well. So these are quite, in terms of departure, it's a clear departure from what they had promised earlier. So this is not I would say that, I've now covered many manifestos of the Congress party. I would say that this does a balancing act. For example, I'll tell you some very progressive promises. It stops short of promising legalizing same-sex marriage, but it promises that if they come to power, they will recognize civil unions, same-sex civil unions. So the other interesting thing that they said, that we will go back to the original concept of bail being the norm and not jail being the norm. So it has also promised that we will actually pass a law that will make bail the norm and jail the exception. So these are there is in my earlier report I had written how quite a few sections have been devoted to what they say as to undo the legacy of the Narendra Modi government.
Right. So that's really interesting. Both of you, thank you so much. I'm going to briefly just ask you for a very short response on, do you think that each of these manifestos have worked, in the sense of, will they mobilize at this critical early stage? Will they mobilize elections? Will they mobilize votes for the party as it is heading to the polls? Just give me 30 seconds of your take on that.
Narayan, the only thing I can tell you is that the entire campaign of the BJP is around Modi ki guarantee, the guarantee of Modi, and that's what the manifesto is also called. It's got one section of his achievements till now and a continuation of the promises of the past. So, in that sense, of course, it is kind of the guiding light of their campaign, and if they win, some of that will be attributed to this. Although I have yet to come across a major manifesto which has really won the election for anybody.
Well, I would say that here the Congress is pinning its hopes on the manifesto. In fact, this is a huge campaign point. Look, the opposition realizes that they do not have elections have become very presidential in style, Narayan. We are a parliamentary democracy, but the campaign is very presidential in nature. And when you have somebody as tall as Prime Minister Narendra Modi to take on, the absence of a leader in the opposition camp is quite telling. Frankly, they want to make this as Narendra Modi versus the people of India. They want to pitch this manifesto as a document that reflects the voices of people of India. And they're actually pinning their hopes on this manifesto, 5 pillars of justice and 25 guarantees. And they would hope that it gets the votes as well, not just become a talking point, but also get the votes as well.
Thank you so much. So I think we've had an excellent discussion on this, and I thank you both for that. So on the BJP side, how been around the Prime Minister Modi's own personality, and he is seen as the person who's going to be driving a future government forward in terms of the economy, in terms of the various other promises that the BJP has made, or at least alluded to in the past, which have not yet been achieved. It has already achieved so many. And on the Congress side, I think, again, we saw that justice, social, political, economic, is a central theme. And as Sandeep also just mentioned, it has to do with how can we actually undo some of the so-called the damage that they see is done during the Modi years. So these are the broad perspectives from which these two parties are coming when they've put their intentions into words. And I really once again thank Nistula and Sandeep, both of you, so much for being here and fleshing out the detail of all of that, and look forward to having you back again. I hope sometime in a future discussion for ThoughtCast.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please continue to visit www.thehindu.com for more on ThoughtCast and other video and podcast series. We are very excited to be bringing you these stories and conversations, especially on the eve of this election, and looking forward to much more. Of course, that includes your feedback, shares on social media, and let us know what you think. Thank you.